Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to go and take a little bit of a look at a snapshot of the metagame over in Japan, since what is essentially Chilling Reign went and released over in Japan. They have just made their Sword and Shield 6 set legal, so essentially Chilling Reign, or Chilling Reign as it will be over here, is now out and legal for tournament play over in Japan. So we can take a little bit of a look ahead, a little bit of a snapshot, and we can actually see what our format is likely to look like when Chilling Reign drops in June. And frankly, there are two significant ways where I was wrong. Now, this table was tweeted out by the lovely Antoine Boulet, who apparently just isn't running out of ways to help us, which is awesome. And there are two things when I look at this that really jump out. Maybe three. Now, I should mention how this actually reads. Essentially, what we've got here are the results of 9 tournaments. And the top row is the winners of those tournaments. The second row is the second place of those tournaments. And the third and fourth rows are top 4 in those tournaments. So yes, we're talking about 9 smallish tournaments over in Japan. But that's not really the point. The point is, we are still talking proper tournaments with people who are using Chilling Reign and turning up and trying really hard. And when we get 9, and there are a few more we can look at in a moment, this is going to start getting a little bit indicative of an actual format. Now, when you look at this, if you're like me, the very first thing that stood out to you is, how is Eternatus still doing so well? If we look at Eternatus there, it won one of the tournaments, it got second place in another 4, and then it looks like we had another 5 top 4 finishes. To put it another way, in 5 of those 9 tournaments, Eternatus VMAX ended up in the finals, which is ludicrous. Incidentally, it actually beat Rapid Strike Urshifu in one of those finals. And the thing is, at this stage, Eternatus is supposed to be some garbage, junk, unplayable deck. Eternatus is supposed to be trash. And there are a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, we've got that new Galarian Zapdos. If you've got 3 Pokemon V in play, Galarian Zapdos attacks for just a single energy and gets a 1-hit KO, and for what it's worth will actually remove any weakness guard energy you've got before doing damage. It's silly. It should be a single energy tech that can basically be put into almost any deck. You need to play something that counts as fighting energy, but that's easily done, to take out Eternatus. And yet, it's still doing really well. We've got Path to the Peak. Now, this is a new stadium card, which has just come around, and again is going to be in our Chilling Reign set. And that is basically Power Plant, but it's for any Pokemon with a rule box, EX, GX, etc. So this is turning off abilities, including Eternatus' ability to have extra bench to do extra damage, and Crobat's ability to draw, which are basically the 2 main parts of the deck. Again, Path to the Peak is supposed to be a great counter to Eternatus. And between Path to the Peak and Galarian Zapdos, the conventional wisdom, at least in US, Europe, etc., as I'm hearing people talk about it, is that Eternatus is essentially an unplayable deck. And yet, it is absolutely crushing. And the reason it's absolutely crushing is probably something to do with the fact, well, there are a couple of reasons. Firstly, it is a fast, consistent, powerful deck. That hasn't changed. Secondly, you can take a look there and see that actually Urshifu only got 1 second place finish, and that is all the Urshifu that we saw. We saw just as much success for Dragapult, and actually we see that Shadow Rider Calyrex is kind of doing awesome as well. So there's actually quite a lot of Psychic running around, ladies and gentlemen. There is quite a lot of Psychic. And maybe that has something to do with the fact that Eternatus is good because Urshifu is significantly less playable. Now, I still think there are some good explicit counters to Eternatus, but the main deck that would keep it in check is kind of being kept out of the format. And it is worth noting that the only Eternatus that actually won in these 9 tournaments did take down an Urshifu in the final, which means even Eternatus can beat Urshifu. The other thing that really jumped out to me is that we saw as many wins for Ice Rider Calyrex as we saw for Shadow Rider Calyrex. Now, it actually had more second place finishes, 2-0. If we look at top 4s, then we saw that Shadow Rider had, I think, 3 top 4s, and Ice Rider had 2. But actually, as much as Shadow Rider Calyrex is good, and it is, turns out Ice Rider Calyrex is also pretty gosh darn good as well. And frankly, I think I need to start taking this card a little more seriously. When I looked at this, my first thought was, oh my goodness, Eternatus is doing way better than I thought it would. And my second thought was, I am really, really underrating Ice Rider Calyrex. It apparently is way better than I am actually giving it credit for. Now, Ice Rider Calyrex V Max is a very, very efficient Pokemon. For 2 energy, 2 colorless, it does 10 damage plus 30 more for each of your opponent's bench, 160 if they've got a full bench. But for 2 water energy, you do 10 damage, discarding up to 2 energy from this Pokemon, doing 120 more for each one discarded in this way. So it's basically 250 for 2 energy, which I don't think sounds too bad at all. Now, unfortunately, what we don't have here is a whole bunch of deck lists, which is a little bit sad, but you could use this with Frostmoth, or you could use it with Turbo Patch, or you can use it with Melanie. Melanie is Welder, but instead of attaching 2 fire energy from your hand, you attach 1 water energy from your discard. But obviously, Melanie, attached for turn, that is your 2 energy to then hit another 250. I suspect we're talking some combination of Frostmoth and or Melanie here. That seems pretty gosh darn sensible. And it turns out that actually, that is what we need. And this is a deck which I need to start taking very, very seriously, because if we look at the results of these tournaments, it is blatantly a top tier deck. 2 wins, 2 second places, 2 top 4s in 9 tournaments. That ain't too shabby. And even if these are smaller local tournaments, I don't care. If we see a pattern, we see a pattern. It really is as simple as that. Now, a couple other things to note. Decidueye actually took 2 wins. No second places, no top 4s. It is win or bust for Decidueye. We did see Kevin Kruger doing quite well in the region finals of the Players' Cup these past couple of weeks with Decidueye. Chose to go away from the deck for the global finals. But maybe this is one that, again, we need to start taking really rather seriously. Because if we look at Decidueye here, it's awesome. And if we look at the rest of the format, there are very, very few non-VMAX GX decks. Essentially, if we go back to the overall plan, we've got 1 Mad Party and 1 Hooper, and then the 2 Decidueye, and that is it. That is literally it. Every other deck is GX or VMAX focused, or I suppose the odd Pokemon V. So it is actually pretty interesting that Decidueye can then come along. I have no idea what a Hooper deck is, incidentally. That's a Hooper that does 90 damage when it became active this turn. I cannot believe that is taking down VMAX decks. It doesn't even hit for weakness, which would obviously be good against Shadow Rider Calyrex, but it doesn't hit for weakness, so I have absolutely no idea, if I'm honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. But it turns out that Decidueye being able to block Vs and GXs is pretty good. And honestly, we want to look at this and go, hang on a second. Phoebe lets these Pokemon VMAXs hit through anything that would be blocking them, like Decidueye. I can only imagine that the deck lists are getting a little bit greedy and choosing not to play Phoebe. Because, you know, we saw in the Players' Cup Global Finals that say, the Eternatus decks were tending to play 1 Phoebe and a Palpad. So they had access to essentially 2 throughout the game, which would generally be enough. So maybe players are getting a little bit greedy and not playing them. The other thing that stands out to me quite nicely there is that the new Rapid Strike Inteleon is legit. We see there that it made a second place finish with Rapid Strike Urshifu. There was a second place finish with Dragapult. And there was a top 4 finish with Inteleon VMAX. It's actually really good. Now, for those of you that have forgotten, it is Decidueye GX in terms of ability. Once during a turn, you can drop 2 damage counters. But the thing you need to remember here is that because we've got Mustard, if it's in your discard and Mustard is the only card in your hand, you can actually play Inteleon from the discard just straight away. You drop Mustard, you play Inteleon from the discard, draw 5 cards, job's a good un. I imagine it's being played with Mustard. They might be evolving up naturally. And do bear in mind, we have got that really good Drizzile that lets you grab a trainer card when you evolve up into it. And to be fair, we've got that new Sobble, which is a basic that lets you search for free Rapid Strike Pokemon and bench them. So we do have really good pre-evolutions of Inteleon if we want to avoid using Mustard. Point is, Inteleon looks absolutely legit, although it is worth noting only one of them was a quote-unquote Rapid Strike deck. The other 2 were just random decks that happened to be playing the Inteleon. Of course, Dragapult drops damage counters and Inteleon VMAX hits the bench. So being able to drop extra damage is clearly an excellent thing. The synergy writes itself. And then I suppose we need to mention very quickly Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. Now, this is a Pokemon I have spoken about a lot. I see this as an absolute top tier deck moving forward, and that still does look like it's borne out. 2 of these 9 tournaments were won by Shadow Rider Calyrex. We did also see 2 wins for Ice Rider and 2 wins for Decidueye, but still, 2 of them were won by it. And we saw a bunch of top 4 finishes as well. It is clearly a legit deck. It seems to be that the best way to play it is with Mewtwo and Mew. Accelerate a bunch of Psychic Energy, and then use Mewtwo and Mew to do its own thing. I mean, the ability lets you attach a Psychic Energy from your hand to one of your bench Psychic Pokemon and then draw 2 cards. And the attack does 10 damage plus 30 more for each Psychic Energy attached to all of your Pokemon. It is clearly a powerhouse. It is not dominating quite as much as I was thinking it was going to. But remember, we are still very early. We are finding our feet in this format. It absolutely looks like a contender. But if we look at this as a whole, it looks weird. Eternatus is doing way better than we thought it would. Decidueye is back and legit. That Inteleon is coming around all over the place in a bunch of different decks. And it looks like as good as Shadow Rider Calyrex is, Ice Rider Calyrex is, well, at the moment at least, just as good. Now, there is a second lot of tournaments that I can show you here, most of which apparently are from Tokyo. There's another 8 tournaments here, and honestly, there's nothing too outside the realm. There are a few weirder decks here. There's Victini Shadow Rider Calyrex, that obvious combination. We've got Durant coming out taking a second place. Cryogonal Inteleon seems a little bit weird. The Cryogonal, if you've forgotten, item locks while doing like 10 damage. But then I suppose the theory is that while you're item locking, the Inteleon actually starts throwing down a lot more damage. Sounds like fun. Seems weird, but sounds like fun. But if we go back to our original talking points, okay, admittedly that is the only place Inteleon shows up here, but we still got Eternatus doing brilliantly. Won 3 of these 8 tournaments, got second in 3 of them. We still see Shadow Rider Calyrex doing very well. We still see Inteleon showing up. It had a win and a top 4. And even though there weren't any wins or second places, we still see 4 top 4 finishes, which is essentially 1 every other tournament for Ice Rider Calyrex. Things are weird, right? But I kind of love it. So the big takeaways, I suppose, from looking over at these tournaments in Japan are that Shadow Rider Calyrex is legit, but Ice Rider Calyrex is basically just as good. Eternatus is far from dead. It is right up there as a proper tier 1 deck. Decidueye is absolutely a real thing still doing absolutely brilliantly. That new Inteleon is awesome. And Rapid Strike Urshifu is not showing up like we might have expected. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it looks like at the moment. That's what it's going to look like for us, we imagine, when this set drops and is legal in June. For now, I want to know what you think about all of this, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCG Radio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.